What's up, YouTubers? This video is about banking in Central Americas, more specifically in Guatemala. And this video is recorded in 2019, and it's mainly about how to open up a basic checking account or savings account. But in this case, I was going for a checking account with an ATM card. Basically, in Guatemala, there's only really two, well, there's more than two banks, but there's really two banks that are somewhat user-friendly for gringos, and that's Bank G&T and BAM. There's also um, Banco Industrial, and there's also, which is not good for personal accounts. They're very good for corporate accounts. There's also BAC. They're not so good either. Basically, from most people I've talked to, Bank G&T Continental is about the best bank for personal banking. Anyways, I just came from there. Last week, I tried to open an account. This video is about how tough it is. Even if you have permanent residency, even if you ask for the requirements, they still make it quite difficult to open an account. Like, for example, last week they asked for two guarantors, and you have to show your deputy or your national ID card and a utility bill, usually within the last 2 or 3 months. I met all those requirements, and then today I found out they want two pieces of local ID, not a passport, but local ID. So I wasn't able to get the account. Now I'm so frustrated. I spent like a week trying to open up bank accounts at BAM and Bank G&T. So I've come to the conclusion that you're far better off. Here's another thing. I know quite a few people who've had their accounts open and then they'll close, and then the bank will close them for reasons that only make sense to the banks. So probably going forward, the best way to bank now in your country, wherever you're going to have your residency, is try to do the best you can to open up a personal account, but it can be very difficult. And consider opening a SA Corp. An LLC in the U.S. or the equivalent in Canada or the equivalent in the United States can also be an option for whatever it is you're trying to do. In my case, I needed a local account for one of my overseas accounts to send money to, because they won't send it to a U.S. bank. Well, it looks like I'll have to close that account. I've basically had most of my overseas accounts shut off because it's very, very tough to get a utility bill in your own name in Latin America. The easiest way, or the only way I know of, is to get a utility service like for example, Wi-Fi or internet. Most of the time when you move into a place, the utilities are going to be in someone else's name, so you just assume those. And when you're banking in Latin America, for example, you can get a utility bill. Like I have an apartment, you can get their utility bill and take it down, but it's not in your name. So although a local bank will open an account, some of the offshore accounts won't accept that, proving your residency. That's the issue I've had. I've opened overseas accounts. I have a perfectly legal residency here in Central America, Guatemala, and it's very, very tough because they want a bank statement or they want a utility bill. Anyways, I've come to the conclusion that going forward I don't know if this has to do with the pressure of the U.S. government putting pressure on expats so they can't expat or make it harder, or making it harder to expat. But basically, you're better off having your bank accounts and corporate accounts, because it's getting to the point now where you may get your personal account, but then it may be shut off. You may get your offshore brokerage account, but then get it shut off because you can't have all the proper utility bills, because of most, not always, but in general, most times when you rent an apartment, utility bills in the name of the owner or the corporation you're renting from. So there is no utility bills. Like, for example, in my place, the light bill, the garbage bill, the Wi-Fi bill, it's all included, so I don't get that bill on my name. So I'm somewhat SOL when it comes to that. So I've been thinking about it more and more. You're better off now putting all your accounts, even your investment accounts and trading accounts, in an SA corporation or an LLC, or whatever's appropriate for your own personal situation. That's actually easier than starting a personal bank account now. It used to be easy to open bank accounts anywhere in the world in a personal account, but nowadays more and more it's just a pain in the neck. Anyways, that's just my opinion. banking in Guatemala 2019, you will need your DEPI. And most banks will require you to have two guarantors. Which what that means is you'll need the names and phone numbers and their occupations of people who will basically sponsor you. I don't know if they call them up or not, but in any case, you can use your lawyer, and the people in his law firm will back you up. In my case today, they are asking for even more local ID. Just as another aside, a lot of these offshore accounts they'll say, well, why not give us your driver's license? Well, you can get a driver's license here. It's really not that hard, but there's no address of where you live on it. Most things here don't have your address on it, like for example, your DEPI. So that's why they require a bank statement or a utility bill, which, like I said, is a real pain in the neck to get. So it's partly the way things work here, and it's partly the way the U.S. government's putting pressure on governments not to let Americans bank, which means it's harder and harder to become an expat. And maybe it's a little conspiratorial, but I think they're kind of clamping down. So going forward, it's actually easier to open up a corporate account, somewhere else in the world, have all your banking and all your trading accounts hooked that way. And just for the record, I make most of my money through trading and whatnot. So this is why I really need this. And my only workaround is maybe I could open up a futures account in the U.S. and trade futures, but I don't like trading futures. If I do that, I'd rather just trade options on futures. But even then, I don't like trading options on futures prices. I won't get into all the legal ramifications of futures, but the way futures works, I prefer not to trade futures. This is why I like to use old style brokerage accounts overseas, because they're a lot more flexible in what they can offer you as a trader. Anyways, this is just my short video on the complexities of banking in Guatemala and in general all over Latin America, and in general all over the world. In fact, there's a lot of places in Hong Kong and Singapore where they won't even open an account, even if you're a resident somewhere else. Some will, but most won't. So the noose is tightening as far as putting your money offshore and using trading vehicles offshore, which can be really, really beneficial to a trader. So I'm just posting this now just to post a little frustration, what you're up against, and the patience that's required to open a personal account here. Anyways, like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment, especially on any of your banking issues. I'll just say this one last thing. I've come across so many foreigners. They've jumped through every requirement, met every requirement, and then their bank account is open, and then usually a month or two later their bank account is closed. That's why I'm leaning more and more towards you don't have to do anything, but it's just more convenient and a way easier to open up a SA corporation or some kind of corporate account in the States or Canada or wherever you feel is appropriate for your personal situation. Anyways, that's all I have for now. I'm going to shut this off and upload it. Again, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. I appreciate any comments on your banking struggles in Latin America or wherever you happen to be expating at. Thank you. Good night.